Namaskar. We are back with another episode of Career Corner. As is always, in every episode we take up one domain of learning, one domain in public sphere, one domain of profession, and we have a stalwart to speak on that domain, how it has evolved, what are the various phases in its growth and evolution historically, what are the current trends today, what are the various areas of specialization and how do they differ from one another, how is it ideally to be studied, learnt, how is it being mentored and learned at Adamas University, what are the various programs on offer, how the offerings are unique, and what sort of industry and social needs does that domain fulfill, particularly in the context of post-pandemic world, where will that domain lead to? These are the various aspects that we look over 1 hour of one particular domain, and today's domain is a very interesting one, something that everyone has an opinion about, but many would not be sure about things. Yes, it's about psychology. Psychology, everyone has an opinion, but very few are experts. And we have an expert with us, a stalwart from the field, who is the head of the Department of Psychology, School of Basic and Applied Sciences, Adamas University, Kolkata, the HOD, Professor Dr. Jhilli Tiwari. Welcome, ma'am, to the show.
Good morning, thank you.
Interesting subject that you have taken up for your career, for your lifetime mission, I must say. And the first thing that normally comes in mind is, we speak about psychology in our day-to-day psychological issues, in our day-to-day parlance, day-to-day lexicon, day-to-day conversation. It comes often, everyday newspaper will have the word psychology or psychological used more than once every day on the papers or in the media and all that. But where did it origin? How is the term psychology and the concept and the domain start from? From where at all? And did it origin as psychology, or it is an offshoot of some other sciences or some other philosophical thought or some other line of thinking or practice? So where is the origin of psychology and how it has evolved over the decades and centuries as it has grown? Over to you, ma'am.
Okay. Well, as of other disciplines, psychology also have started from philosophy. Now, even the term, what does the word psychology mean? It means the study of the psyche or the soul. The word psychology itself, the root word actually has come from the Greek word. So the earliest history of psychology can be traced back in time to the early Greeks. Now, during the 17th century, the French philosopher René Descartes introduced the idea of dualism, which asserted the mind and the body were two entities that interact to form our human experiences. During mid-1800s, a German physiologist named Wilhelm Wundt, he set up the world's first psychological laboratory in 1879 at the University of Leipzig. Now here started the transformation of psychology from a branch of philosophy
into an independent domain.
Right, independent domain of the science
and
domain.
How did this term psychology came? You just explained.
The root word is from the study of the mind or the soul. Now, where is the soul situated?
Okay, great.
Where can you find the soul? Is it in the heart? Is it in the mind? So initially what happened was people used to think that the soul was in the heart because it was pulsating and it was active. But then later philosophers found out that no, it was somewhere else. A more powerful object, a more powerful organ was actually commanding and controlling our body again, where the mind was situated in the brain. So slowly, after the German, as I was saying, that Wilhelm Wundt, he set up his first laboratory, and this event is generally considered the official start of psychology as a separate and distinct scientific discipline. Now, Wundt, he viewed psychology as the study of consciousness, and he sought to apply experimental methods to study the internal mental processes. Now, one of his students, E.B. Titchener, in 1895, he was actually one of Wundt's very famous and very favorite student of his. Now, he introduced the concept of the first major school of thought, that is of structuralism. What was structuralism? structuralism was the human consciousness now was broken up into smaller distinct parts, and it was studied through a process called introspection. Now introspection would be like, for example, if I if I give you this cup, for example, and I will ask you that what do you feel when you see this cup. You introspect your feelings, break it down into smaller smaller discrete thoughts and let me know on the basis of verbal reports. So he started off the process of introspection and where he would train subjects, and they would break down their responses and reaction to the most basic sensations and perception. So structuralism helped in establishing psychology as an independent and organized discipline by separating it from philosophy and metaphysics. After this, another, as of every subject, subjects evolve, disciplines change. So after this came William James, and he brought with him the concept of the school of thought which was associated with him was functionalism. Now it's all very fine, structuralism says like break down the thoughts into discrete parts, but how will behavior actually work to help people live in the environment? And how can you he tried to study the functions of mind and behavior. What are the functions of mind and behavior? So functionalists utilize methods such as direct observation to study the human mind and behavior. Along with this, they did experiments in the way in which learning, problem solving, motivation helps people and animal adapt to their environment. Of course, he was very much influenced by Darwin's theory of evolution. Okay, along with this, we are having different changes. Along with this came the Gestaltists. Now, Gestaltists usually they did not believe in breaking down thoughts into distinct parts. They viewed emotions, thoughts, everything was viewed as a whole. The word Gestalten, actually the word means as a whole. Okay, so they did not maintain that mind is made up of combination of simple elements, and they thought that mind should be thought of as resulting from whole pattern of sensory activity and relationship and organization within this pattern. I will show you an example. For example, if you see this picture, okay, so what does it look like?
Picture isn't visible, doesn't matter. It's
right.
Explain it.
Okay, so
because unless it's a color, it won't be shown.
Right.
Yeah.
So if I give you a conglomeration of dots, okay, you would not see it as dots. You would see like suppose a triangle, and instead of drawing the triangle, as you see when children are young, you often give this dot by dot pattern. But somehow, if you give a triangle in shapes of dots, you will be able to decipher that this is a triangle. Okay, because human beings, we have a tendency to see things as a whole, not as discrete parts. All right. Now, this was Gestalt psychology. Now, along with this came another very radical view, that is the emergence of psychoanalysts. Now, up till this point, early psychologists stressed conscious human experiences. Now, in 1886, an Austrian physician named Sigmund Freud, he changed the face of psychology in a dramatic way. He proposed a theory of personality that emphasized the importance of the unconscious mind. Now, the psychoanalytic theory proposed by Sigmund Freud had a tremendous impact on 20th century thought, influencing the mental health field as well as other areas including art, literature and popular culture. But many other theorists often they sort of criticized Freud in the fact that it was not scientific, because you cannot see the unconscious, it is not observable. So in the earlier 20th century, another school of thought which was known as behaviorism, this school rose to dominance, especially one of the pioneers was J.B. Watson, 1879 to 1958, and he was basically from Johns Hopkins University. So behaviorism strove to make psychology a more scientific discipline by focusing purely on observable behavior. Now, one of the most famous work was of Ivan Pavlov, who researched on the digestive system of dogs, which led to the discovery of classical conditioning process, which proposed that behavior could be learned via conditioned associations. For the next 50 years, this school of thought continued to dominate. And behavioristic approaches reflected in therapeutic techniques such as behavioral analysis, behavioral modification, and token economies, which was used to help children and still is used to help children learn new skills and overcome maladaptive behaviors. Okay, after this comes the third force of psychology. During the 1960s, humanistic psychology emerged, which emphasized looking at the whole individual and stressed concepts such as free will, self-efficacy, and self-actualization. Rather than focusing and concentrating on the dysfunction, humanistic psychologists try to help people fulfill their potential and maximize their well-being. Now, pioneers in this field included Abraham Maslow, Carl Rogers, and other prominent humanistic thinkers would be Rollo May and Erich Fromm. So, humanistic movement contributed to new ways about thinking. Right around this time in 1950s to 1960s, and which is still continuing, came the cognitive psychology approach. Now, this till date, it is a very dominant area of psychology as research continues to study higher mental processes such as perception, memory, decision making, problem solving, intelligence, and language. And of course, the introduction of brain imaging techniques such as MRI, PET scan. All of these has helped improve the ability of researchers to more closely study the inner workings of the human mind. So more or less, this completes the whole trajectory of the path from philosophy to a more scientific approach of psychology.
Great. There has been the entire evolution has been put before you over the last almost 200 plus years, 250 years, that psychology in its formal structure has actually evolved from dualism of body and mind to structuralism of mind components to functionalism, functions of mind and behavior, to psychoanalysis, particularly of Sigmund Freud, which has been a landmark development. We know the Freudian psychoanalysis focusing on mental health and sexuality and many other aspects, and moving on to behaviorism and then cognitive understanding of psychology. The entire evolution has been put before you, and this has come to 21st century in a particular context where scientific understanding of psychology has become significant. At one point of time, when we were young in universities, we found the psychology was a part of humanities. Today, increasingly, psychology is a part of the science faculty, and even at Adamas University, it is a part of faculty of basic and applied sciences. Madam, would you like to explain how scientific is the study of psychology? Right. Why should it be under the domain of basic and applied sciences?
Okay. Psychology uses experimentation and measurement. These are the two main areas which is scientific, and as I was said, the first laboratory which is set up was by Wilhelm Wundt, and it was based on experimentation. Just like that, none of our theories are based on conjecture alone. It is based on total experimentation and verification of the theory. Now, to be a science subject, you need to have, like, even the tests which we use, they are standardized. Standardized in the sense they have validity, they have reliability. So if you assess the same person over and over again, they will consistently show, if they consistently show the same result, then we will consider the test as a valid or a reliable test. Okay, and if the test measures which it purports to measure, we will consider the test as a valid test. Plus, all our data is based on observation, scientific observation, systematic observation. So for all these reasons, and for its quantification, especially quantification of data, psychology is part of science.
Since it's talking about measurement, it's about analysis based on data, the scientificity of psychology can be stressed to that, or to those origins, or to those through that approach. Yes, to become a full science or natural science, to be considered as a natural science, obviously it has to evolve to various levels, but it's a growing science in that sense. Now, psychology is today an overarching term that refers to several components within its sphere. There are several specialization areas, there are several focus areas, and psychology is a very broad term. So what are the various focus areas or specializations, or in other words, niche areas within psychology, ma'am?
Okay. Now, one thing I would just like to explain, that there's a various ways of looking at before I go into focus areas, suppose there's a problem. There are various different perspectives in which you can view that particular problem. For example, if I give you a case, suppose there is a person who has memory deficit, and he comes with you with he's having problems with his memory and he can't remember. So in that case, how would you really what are the different perspectives in which you can view the same person? I mean, all are part of psychology. Okay, now for example, the behavioral perspective would focus on the precise description of the changes of the man's behavior. We try to teach the person behavioral skills, so he might learn to compensate for the behavioral problems which is caused by his forgetfulness. Then we have the biological perspective. The biological perspective will try to relate the behavior to the functions of the body. The nervous system, the glandular system will try to investigate the brain. So maybe Mr. A is at the beginning of Alzheimer's disease, and the chemistry of the brain is at fault. Then we have the cognitive perspective, and cognition refers to perception of the world around us. So it refers to the processing of information that we receive through our senses. So there can be differences in the way person processes information, which may lead to difference in his behavior. So in this particular case, like, questions will be raised as to exactly what was forgotten, what is Mr. A forgetting, and what is he remembering, and how the processing of information has been changed, and whether the man could be helped by giving him new ways of processing the information, the incoming information, for storage in his memory, and which can be later retrieved from his memory store. Then we have the social perspective. Now this will focus on how the memory deficit will affect Mr. A's relationship with other people. So we will look at the changes in the number and the quality of the relationship the person is having because of his deficits. Then we have the developmental perspective, which again will focus on the characteristics changes that occur in the person during their lifetime and as they mature. So we will view now Mr. A's behavior as resulting partly from the ongoing aging process. Okay, then we have the humanistic perspective. The humanistic perspective emphasizes the person's sense of self. Now, as a result of his problems, how is that affecting his self-efficacy, his self-worth? How is he perceiving himself? So that will again have an effect on his behavior. So we would see his competence and work and his effectiveness of himself as a person, and whether his self-esteem will be damaged or not. Then we come to the psychoanalytic perspective. Now often here part of a psychoanalysis is a part of a broader perspective called the psychodynamic school. So when a 55-year-old man forgets appointments, there may be an unconscious reason, or perhaps deep down he dislikes the person he was supposed to see. So, or he could resent his job. So unconscious self expresses the resentment, causing him to forget some of those demands. So actually, if you focus on only one perspective, you will not get the whole picture. For example, the elephant, if you touch one part at a time, you will not get the whole picture of the elephant. So all these perspectives needs to be viewed as a whole to understand the person, the individual, which psychology focuses on, the individual.
This was an interesting story on how various perspectives of psychology can look at human behavior, human mind from various angles. Let's look at the oft repeated words psychiatry and psychology. How are they different?
Right.
And obviously there are also aspects of clinical psychology and non-clinical psychology. So if you could speak about psychiatry, psychology, clinical psychology, and what are non-clinical aspects of psychology on these a bit more.
Right. People usually confuse between psychiatry and psychology. Now, a psychiatrist requires a MD, a medical degree. To be a psychiatrist, you will have to go through the MBBS course, and then you have to specialize in psychiatry. And after that, that's who a psychiatrist is. They can prescribe medicines, but a clinical psychologist cannot prescribe medicine. What they need is they need a specialization in clinical psychology at the master's level, and after that they require an MPhil. MPhil on clinical psychology, whereby they will get the registration from RCI, which will enable them to practice psychology, clinical psychology. Now, clinical psychologists cannot prescribe medicines, but they work hand in hand with the psychiatrist. It's like, you cannot, it's a relationship, right? So the psychiatrist prescribes the medicine, and from there the clinical psychologist takes on the after the maintenance factor is there, then the clinical the therapy starts. So this is the distinction between a clinical psychologist and a psychiatrist. Now, other than clinical psychology, there are also other areas of specialization. For example, we have organizational behavior, we have a school counselor. So there are different areas, and we have forensic psychologist also. So we have different areas of specialization other than clinical psychology. So of course, forensic psychology, to be a forensic psychologist, you need to have some knowledge of clinical psychology, because you deal with legal matters, and you help you help the law in with regards to criminal behavior. But then we have the organizational behavior, which is psychology in the organizational field. Okay, so there is again a distinction, because clinical psychology deals only with mental ill health or mental difficulties, right? Abnormal in the abnormal area, while your OB specialists, they deal with individuals working in the organizational field. So whatever adjustment problems with managers and workers, and of course even personnel selection, all this the organizational behavior psychologist, they deal with it.
Industrial psychology as well. Yeah, explain industrial psychology. Yeah.
Right. Industrial psychology would be industrial psychologists are involved in job recruitment. They personal selection, where you have to select people for promotion. They will view their personality profile, and also where conflict management, they deal with that area, especially with conflict with the management and the workers, and of course counseling, which is concentrated in the industry, in the workings of the industry.
Counseling is a major task, one of the major functional areas of people who have graduated, post-graduated from psychology. What are the various types of counseling? Because this is a major job provider or engagement provider. So what are the various types and categories of counseling?
Okay. Now people often confuse academic counselors with counselors, right? With mental health counselors. Now there is a big difference in that. Now, academic counselors, they can, when you have a confusion regarding which line of work which area you want to study in, you go to academic counselors. They will help you there. But mental health counselors only deal with mental illnesses. And there is, of course, a part of that would be career counseling. Career counseling, you go usually they help you when you have a confusion regarding which path would be suitable for you, which career would be suitable for you. So on the basis of assessments of tests, where they will measure your personality, your intelligence, your interest, on the basis of that they will suggest a career choice for you, which you may, if you like, you can go for. And that's career counseling. Then you have your school counselors. Now school counselors are counselors who are employed in schools. Especially they deal with children with adjustment problems. They deal with family, because child, the interaction with the sometimes problems arise due to interaction between the family and the child. So they deal with that situation. And of course, if a child is not performing academically well, if the child is a slow learner, the school counselors will identify that and suggest therapy or measures accordingly.
So that's about counseling, which is the target profession of several young people who graduate from psychology. So with this background of origin, phases, evolution, perspectives, categories of psychology, we move to how it should be learned. What is the ideal way to learn? What are the various programs that you lead in the department at the bachelor's and the master's level? And how are they distinctive, unique in comparison to similar programs in other universities and colleges? Over to you, ma'am.
Right. Psychology is such a subject, it is just not bookish knowledge. You have to really feel and understand the subject, because it, not everybody can, I think not everybody can study psychology, because you need certain characteristics, certain personality features to, really understand this subject. What are the features which one would require is, one is you should have compassion. You should be able to empathize. You should be, analytical. You should have good communication skills, especially when you're dealing with clients. A communication skill is very important. And most of all, like in the understanding, an enormous amount of patience. Patience is a very important virtue in this subject. Now, when you are in our LMS University, often people, undergraduates who do come in, many may have a background in psychology, many may not have a background in psychology. That is completely fine, because in the undergraduate program we teach everything from the beginning. But certain misconceptions are there. Many people think that psychology is a very easy subject. And while I was interacting with my students, I find that many people has taken this subject as a fallback. Maybe they didn't get into joint, they didn't get into other medical profession. They've taken up this as a subject as a standby. Okay, but in spite of that, I have seen people actually falling in love with the subject while they are studying it. Because this subject not only teaches you how to deal with others, it teaches you how to deal with yourself. It creates self-awareness. It creates, when you know yourself better, you are able to help people better. So the course of the undergraduate program focuses on, first of all, you have in the first semester, you have an introduction to psychology, where, as I said, that even if you are from a non-psychological background, you will know all about attention, perception, motivation, every single aspects and domains of psychology. Then you have a focus in biopsychology. As I told you, psychology is a science subject. Now, you cannot separate the brain from your behavior. You have to study the brain and its workings. You have to study the influence of the endocrine glands and the different parts of the brain and how they function in producing behavior, or any deficit in any parts of the brain, what effect will it have on behavior. So for that, we have biopsychology in the first semester, which focuses on this particular aspect. Then from the next semester onwards, there will be the syllabus focuses on research. The syllabus focuses on statistics, which are part and parcel, because you have to generalize to any research you do, to generalize to the population, you have to have an understanding of statistics. Research is definitely emphasized on, and our department has something unique. That is, we emphasize on research from the undergraduate level. Now we have a sort of, not really a club, but we have a research group, in which children are encouraged from the undergraduate level to join this research group. And this group comprises of both master's students as well as undergraduate students, and their work is basically to read journals and we encourage them to produce papers and write, do experimentations, collect data. We focus on that. So right from the undergraduate level, you will have an exposure to that.
Yeah, but post-graduation, what are the specialization areas in post-graduation?
In post-graduation, coming to post-graduation, the requirement of for post-graduate program, you will have to have psychology in your undergraduate as your core subject. Because we find that because if you don't, because postgraduate is a much more higher level, so you have to have a base in psychology to understand the syllabus. Okay, now in post-graduation level, there are two specializations which we offer. One is clinical psychology, one is organizational behavior. Now, two very important area. Why these two specializations right now at present? Because clinical psychology is the basis. Even if you take forensic psychology, you will require a base in clinical psychology. Even if you take school counseling, clinical psychology will help you in that. So it's sort of, it provides you the base to, for further, even if you deviate from the clinical psychology per se, you have, your base is created. You will not face any problems with any other specialization. And organizational behavior, of course, as I was telling you, industry especially, there's a huge field over there for psychologists, and we have a specialization and dedicated teachers who specialize in that area, and that specialization is there. In our program, we have internship programs which will give you hands-on exposure to these fields. We have students going to, actually this hands-on exposure is emphasized from the undergraduate level as well. Like in an undergraduate program we have our internships, and we have internships in the post-graduation as well. In undergraduate program, usually they go to NGOs or psychiatrists, hospitals. But the government hospitals usually prefer postgraduate students. But we are we are working with them. We want to introduce our children, our undergraduate students as well there. So, but Apollo Hospital, National Medical College, we have Calcutta Medical College, NRS, and RG Kar, all of them, our students have gone there for their internships.
Interesting. It's psychology is a domain which is an education in action. So through case studies, through internships, through journal articles and discussion, peer group discussions on them, and not just merely theoretical or classroom based lectures alone. It's a learning which progresses in multifarious manner, and there is a huge component of experiential learning and learning to learn psychology. So through self-learning as well. You have mentioned about two specializations, clinical and organizational behavior. In typical psychological schools, it will be called industrial psychology. Why do you call it organizational behavior? Because that's a very specific management term, but industrial psychology is what often is used by psychology. There must be a school of thought, or there must be a perspective to which you use OB, if you could explain that.
OB specialist, because we have different specializations, like there's industrial psychology. As a part of industrial psychology is organizational behavior. So we have specialization in that too. Organization does not necessarily mean just industry, it can be other organization as well. Right. So that is why it is like called organizational behavior. Even this institution is an organization. So there are different levels.
So moving ahead, there is every university department has a research ecosystem, an environment of research apart from students' research at the level of MPhil, PhD, postdoctoral. So what is the research scenario and the faculty level and the number and their backgrounds in your department?
Right. We have right now around 5 PhD scholars, and we have two, we have our Professor Emeritus, Professor Anjali Ray, her and me. I've got my PhD degree in psychology, so we are looking into the research area. Other than that, we have a faculty who's already submitted her thesis and just waiting because of the lockdown. She has not been awarded yet, but she's waiting for her award, and she has passed out from Indian Statistical Institute of ISI. So she is extremely talented girl, faculty, and she is focused on cognitive psychology research area. The other faculties are all NET qualified, they are SLATE qualified, they are they have an experience of background teaching, so all of them are very adept in their areas.
Great. So that's the research background of and the faculty background of the department. If for an outsider, a youngster who is thinking of a career in psychology, and there are options in various universities, even in this city and beyond this city, psychology, for that matter, is usually a regular subject in most universities. How distinctive is the Adamus experience of psychology mentoring and learning? What are the USPs there?
Okay. Firstly, if you are interested in a psychology career from our university, I would invite you to please come and visit our labs. We have I would say the best laboratories, you will not find laboratory of this stature anywhere in Calcutta. We have 3 labs. We have one for undergraduate, we have one laboratory for postgraduate, we have one laboratory for our PhD student, where recently we have got the EEG machine, so that further research in the cognitive domain can be done. So, because this is, as I told you, the cognitive psychology is a very upcoming area. So, we would want more research in this field. So, this is one of the USP of our department. Other than that, we have mentorships. We have students and teachers. We have a constant of extremely interactive environment where we can students are like our children to us, and they can talk to us on any aspects they want. So we constantly have we have mentors who are there for our students and who are ready to lend a willing to lend a helping hand whenever required.
So it's a very cooperative, collaborative, participative, experiential approach that you take to deliver or to mentor psychological learning for the youngsters there. One of the perspectives to be in psychology field, obviously apart from being in academics, doing research and all, is surely to go and practice. Practice at 2 levels. Practice can be at individual level, as a counselor, as a consultant, whatever, or could be in a corporate structure, and it could be also with government and NGOs as well. So what are the various career opportunities of those who have already passed out? What are they doing largely, and what are the possible career opportunities of psychology graduates and postgraduates beyond the university education?
Okay, we have a very good placement center over here, and we psychology department is working with collaboration with the placement center. Now, till now, our students who have passed out, they are it's just started in 2015. So the students which have passed out, they are focusing on their MPhil. They are all going into further studies because they want to specialize as clinical psychologists. So we have opportunities in the research field. We have been talking, actually, if this situation because of the lockdown, in a lot of things has been stalled, but we are on the we are conversing with people, and we've talked to Indian Statistical Institute for collaboration with our students, so that they can be placed there for research in the cognitive field. Other than that, the placement center which we have here, they have also offered us internships in cognitive area from Mumbai and different other areas. So we have students who are right now, they are preparing for further studies and further specializations, and this is the second batch of masters which is going to graduate now. So we have all the high hopes for them, and hope they make a good career in their field as well.
So that was an introduction to psychology for you, the domain of psychology, its evolution through the last 2.5 centuries, from dualism to structuralism to functionalism, psychoanalysis, behaviorism, forensic psychology, and many cognitive psychology, many aspects that have evolved over the last 2.5 centuries. And it was also a discussion on the various perspectives of psychology and specialization areas, particularly counseling, industrial or OB, clinical psychology and forensic psychology. These specialization areas, also underlining the fact that psychological education needs experiential learning, case study based learning, participative and collaborative learning, rather than just brick and mortar classroom centric learning. So it was a great introduction to those young people who would be looking forward to psychology as a career, who would be looking forward to making a career in any of the specialized areas of psychology. With this introduction, we bring this session to an end, and we shall meet another day with another domain and another expert going deep into that domain for your understanding and action. Thank you, and with that we end this show. Thank you very much.
Welcome to Adamus. My research is on my way. I am very much proud to be a part of Adamus University.
Cricket is my passion and I am proud to be a part of Adamus University.
You have misused, I believe.
Hi, I am Debosmita Biswas.
This is Kunal Kanti Maiti.
I am Srijoni Paul. This college has given me placement in one of the best companies in US staffing, which is Iconma. I am proud to be a part of Adamus University.
Pursue excellence. Adamus University. In front of Adamus University. That was the day when I realized how much affection my dad had for me. Moreover, the trust and expectations which he conveyed through a glimpse of his eyes without uttering a single word were so touching. And to my mind, this was the time to start a new life. It was a new day, a new place, new surroundings, which would be leading me to a new journey. Excitement and nervousness were at their peak, as I was going to start everything on my own. Was a little nervous, thinking how this surrounding would accept me. But to my surprise, a tinge of happiness ran within me when strangers became friends. The bond grew stronger with each passing day, and very soon my campus became my second home. Life is always surrounded with lots of queries, and so is your classroom, where you get them answered, and that's how you get an insight into your own self and the subject you study. I was so lucky to be learning everything hands-on, practically in several labs, in workshops, in multiple studios, and through indoor and outdoor activities. Beyond studies, there is another avenue which connects me to my soul, and that is sports. I firmly believe that talent wins a game, but teamwork and intelligence create champions. Always make an effort, even when odds are against you, because I believe that a dream doesn't become a reality through magic. It takes a lot of trust, determination, and hard work to create magic. As you approach the end of your journey on the campus, examination will test your memory and application, whereas life will test your actual learning. And finally, you see all your hard work creating a new reality. The results you achieve will be in direct proportion to the efforts you put in. I want to thank you with all my heart for all the faith, hope, and belief you had in me, for all the strength you gave me to face challenges with confidence, along with the wisdom to choose my battles carefully. Today, on this day, all my efforts and results are for you. You have been the pillar of my dreams and will always be. And to my alma mater, Admas University, I can never thank you enough for making me a man out of a boy and a professional out of a student. I will remain a lifelong learner.
I'm proud to be part of Adamas University.
Pursue excellence. Adamas University.
Biosciences and technological developments based on biology, including entrepreneurship in this sector, are on the rise in India. We are home to many developments in all forms of biotechnological products with applications in food, nutrition, healthcare, packaging, etc. The unique BTech and BSc programs in Adamas School of Biosciences and Biotechnology are path-breaking academic innovation in this sector. Welcome to the world of biotechnology. As India aims for $5 trillion economy, the nation needs a large pool of trained economists and commerce graduates, focusing on taxation, macro and microeconomics, etc. Adamas School of Economics and Commerce is in the mission preparing finance and economics professional to lead this journey with value-added modules on the stock market and big data. Global society of nearly 8 billion people with 1.3 billion in India is going through a churn, be it politics, economics, history, society, international relations, or in the literary expressions. There are major movements, growth initiatives, new literary trends, and the social issues rising in various parts of the world. Hence, the need to have an in-depth, perceptive education of liberal arts which encompasses all of these. Welcome to the Adamas University School of Social Sciences. It is important to be on the right side of the law and even more important to ensure justice for all. The Adamas School of Law and Justice firmly believes in this dictum. With moot courts, national and international seminars, debates and initiatives of various type, the law school offers integrated courses with BBA, BCom and BA as well, with different focus areas. With a 24-hour work culture, Adamas School of Management prepares professionals for marketing, human resources, finance, supply chain management, and pharmaceutical management for the new Indian economy targeting $5 trillion annually. Close association with several top corporate houses and intellectual talent in the classroom, the school is proud to have one of the highest placement records in East and the Northeast India. A top-class hands-on engineering and technology education, with high emphasis on soft skills, emotional intelligence, artificial intelligence learning, the Adamas School of Engineering and Technology is a trailblazing institute. It integrates learning in the classroom with laboratory, workshops, and the factories or the corporate offices. It is also associated with several universities in the world. Pharmaceutical technology is on the rise in India in particular and Asia in general. And newer research in medicine is modernizing the sector immensely. We in India have the fastest growing pharma sector in the developing world today. Adamas School of Pharmaceutical Technology, with its superb and detailed laboratory facilities, has one of the best pharma schools in the nation waiting to welcome you. With a 2% share of the India's GDP, the media industry is growing faster than India's GDP. And with the world's largest number of films and television channels, it is the national informer and entertainer. With more than 1,000 films a year, cinema is our soft power. News, entertainment, brand communication, we lead Asia in all. And a multi-skilled multimedia talent is being trained in the Adamas School of Media and Communication. There is no more intellectual pursuit of knowledge higher than the liberal sciences, which encompass physics, chemistry, mathematics, geography, and psychology. Adamas University School of Sciences has seamlessly blended conceptual learning with practice and evolved BSc and MSc courses, leading to research, academic, and corporate careers for the learners. Welcome to the wonderful world of sciences at Adamas University.
Want a good job in a big city after college? Then don't skip this ad. For a great professional future, you need college education with hands-on training, smartness, and a network of talented friends. And you'll get it all at Adamas University. Professors at Adamas share their expert knowledge with students and also equip them with industry skills. Register now for Adamas University admission test and take the leap into a bright future.